This is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it's time for Avoid the Maze, your journey through life. And today's podcast is a real journey through life, and I'm really, really excited about it because my guest, who you may have seen on another podcast, her name is Marla Mays, is working with her dad, which I think is incredible. Congratulations, father and daughter working together. Um, and they've created a play called Being Somebody. And, I read a little bit about it, but Marla, give me a little bit of background and tell us a little bit about the play and how you and your dad decided to work together to create this.
Okay, sure. So, hi. First of all, thank you, Karen, for inviting me back and having my dad on, who I just want to introduce quickly. This is Howard Mace, Dr. Howard Mace. This is my great dad. He's amazing. Well, basically, being somebody really started um, in 1988 when my father wrote all these stories, and he can speak more about it. About his growing up years, but these coming of age stories with themes that he felt were universal. He was about what, 52 at the time?
Yeah,
Yeah,
53.
he was 53 at the time when he wrote these stories. Just so you know, guys, he's just turned 89, so this has been amazing. And he was always, we all knew the stories and people like Friends and stuff like that. Okay, so that he had these stories, and then my mom died in December of 2022, and my father was, caretaking her for like 10 years. She had Lewy body dementia, and she had been bedbound for the last 4.5 years. And if you want to say anything, and he still works, by the way, and he would work throughout that. He's a psychologist. He's a executive coach. Am I saying this right?
You're right. You're
Okay.
right.
I'm not used to being the one talking when my dad's around. uh, so, executive coach, still working. But when she died, um, and he can explain this more. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I'll pick it up from here.
Okay.
Yeah, Roberta, uh, Marla's mother, my wife of 66 years, 64 years, uh, she passed away. And, as anybody's gone through a situation like that, you start wondering what your life's going to be like afterwards. And as a psychologist and still working, I obviously I could expand my practice and did that. However, a very interesting development occurred, which led to being somebody. Um, I was over at Marla's house. We were in the mourning period, the shiva period, and the house was pretty quiet at the moment. And someone comes in by the name of Elizabeth Browning, who happens to be heavily involved in theater and drama, was Marla's
She's been my
teacher.
acting coach for years. I started working with her in 2006. She's like a game changer. Like all my best friends I met via Elizabeth's class, and she's directed things. So she's a very important person in
Yeah.
my life. And so she came
So
to pay her respects.
yeah. So during the conversation, Marla had mentioned that I had written a number of short stories uh, several years before, and Elizabeth asked if she could hear them, and Marla had copies, paper copies, and we started reading them to her. And
He started reading
well, I was reading them,
them.
and uh, she had to sit down from a standing position. She was very impressed and excited, and she said out loud, there's a show in these stories." I said, "What?" And then Marla said,
I said, yes, Dad, yes. Because she's like, this should be a show. And I was just like, yeah, yes. Because, I'm a yes person when it comes to doing projects. Plus, I thought it was a great idea for a show. And then she said, and Marla should be in it too. And
"Right."
I was like, yeah, let's do it. And he was kind of like, maybe, like he,
I'll say what happened. There were two decisions that had to be made. Three decisions for me. First of all, I wanted to do something that Marla would be interested also to bring me close with my daughter in a meaningful way. So the theater, the stage made sense. Uh, Secondly, uh, uh, when the idea of acting on a stage, was scary for me, although I've done presentations over the years as an executive coach. Still, acting is a different game. And Elizabeth said, you could read the stories on the stage, part of it. In other words, walk around with the script in your hand. That was relaxing to know that, say the least. And third, as I said, I really needed something to keep me going. Now, again, this was a week or so after Roberta had passed, so it was very early in the game, and so being involved in a theatrical production made some sense to me from that perspective. So I said, okay, tentatively, but okay.
And then when Elizabeth was leaving the house that day, I'm like, Elizabeth, I'm serious. We're doing this. Like, we're going to do it. And I don't know if she necessarily thought we would, but like she was going away, and I said, no, we're going to do it. And 2 weeks later, she went to LA with other things and came back. And I was like, we're ready. We're doing it. And the thing is that with my dad is that he has this expression, which he can explain more. Where do you get your love from?
Yeah.
And
let me just
go ahead.
expand on that a little bit. As a coach, I work with a lot of executives, especially and other individuals who are thinking about retiring, and it got me to reflect on what happens when one retires from something they've been doing for a long time and that they've been having a good time with or been getting their love from. So, what I mean by love, I'm not talking about romance. I'm talking about feeling valued, feeling respected, feeling accomplished. We get that from work. Some of us do anyway. And so that was a driver for me because it was going to be able to perhaps not only sustain my getting my love for my wife. I'm still working at this advanced stage. I tell everybody I'm 900, but I'm really not 900.
I love it.
89. So, so that was what I was beginning to feel that getting into a play and telling my stories, which are universal, which we'll talk about in a minute about what I mean by that, that would be something that would make me feel good about myself, bring me my love again, and that's how that connected into it. Just one last thing I just want to say about the stories, because Marla had mentioned it. The stories were written in 1988. They were written at a time when I had just recovered from non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and who knew what the future was. Plus, and it got me thinking about myself and my life as up to that time. So we wrote these stories, and I said I want to talk about me in my stories. However, who's going to be interested in me? Yeah, there'll be some, maybe a couple of people here and there hanging around that might be interested. But so I chose those moments in my life that had a huge impact on my being somebody, becoming the person that I became, and the themes of the stories that are discussed, that are done in the play, are universal in that they'll have different details, they'll have different specifics, but the overall theme, as I call it, connects. Things right. Like what it was like in your house in the very early days when you're 4, 5, 6 years old. That surprises that occur in your life that make a difference. Becoming a hero, that's in some way or other. Feeling special. Yeah. So there were a number of stories that were
they're great stories, and people have always, when he's read them, people have always, it's always resonated and liked them, and they're pretty like intense. Elizabeth is like, she loved some of it. I mean, she loves it because she was like, brings you back to a more innocent time, which is true. But I think that the innocent time is the way he presents it, because the actual details of the stories are not that innocent. It's like the first story is about growing up with a lot of people in his family, like 8 people in extended family, them all living together. His mother, his father, his grandmother, his grandfather, him and his brother, and his aunt and his cousin. And then like that his grandfather, drank, and the terror of him when he was drunk. That's not so light, I mean, that's like, and then like stories about like digestion and getting enemas, and and also, and then like teacher being really cruel. So the stories are kind of, they have, I mean, but the way it was written and then his attitude towards it, there's no like, like if someone I feel like now would write it, a different person, younger, who might come out with like blame or anger, not at all. It's just all like beautiful and just what it is,
And what did you say?
And also what I do, and also
yeah.
how I'm involved is, so when we first did, so really this, it's his stuff is, is like being somebody. That was one of the names of one of his stories about like, being the guy that was never, asked to play, like was the last one to be picked for the game,
Sure.
kind of, because he was younger. And then he's the hero, like he catches the ball, wins, gets the touchdown for that moment. But when we were doing this, I just realized that, well, how am I coming in this? So it was like, I said, all right, I'll just mirror the themes of my father in growing up in the 70s in Brooklyn. But mine are really like much more like, they're like palette cleansers in the sense, because my stuff can be very dark, but we don't go there in this one at all. Like it's I mean, there's moments, but it's like funny. It's more like charactery. I like, he has a story about a teacher and breasts, and I have a story about teacher and breasts. You know what I mean? And so I'm more like charactery. I do a few songs. So I open the show with a song. And then I go into like, I open the show with that, like, about growing up in Brooklyn and being the scrappy little kid in the alleyway, playing Ringalivio and running bases, and like how it was like the greatest time in my life. You know what I mean? And feeling safe. And then I kind of, Elizabeth really brilliantly had a way of me handing off the script to him, because he's going to be reading. I don't read. I'm just, performing. So it's been really, it's just really taken off. Like, this is the thing for me. It's like, I've done a lot, I've done a lot of theater and writing, and, things have done well, but like there's some magic in this show. Like, we first did it. Okay, well, we'll do it in New York and it'll be amazing. It'll be great. Invite people. And it's a kind of like a guaranteed win, because my father's never performed before and he's really beloved. Like, he has mentees and people who like call him every day. They can't make a move with him, and he's just beloved. That's like the story of my life, like literally. Like everyone who, like the other day, this is just an example. Just, I hope this is okay. Just give this example.
Sure.
So I know his neighbor next door, Cherie, and she's like my age, whatever. They're very close. And we just ran into her. So she was like, "Hi, Marla." And I was saying hi. And she was with a friend or someone. I wasn't sure if it was a friend or I thought maybe it was the homemade for her mother and this woman, Allison. And I never met. And she's like, "Oh," and she meets me. She's like, "Your father is so incredible. He is such an inspiration. He is, changed my life." And I'm like, "Oh, great. Yeah." I was like, "Yeah, I know. Story of my life." And then we go in the house. I'm like, "Dad, so this Allison woman loves you. Who is she?" Like, she's like, told me all that. She said, she like, "You're so inspiring." He's like, "I just met her this morning."
I love it.
This is what happens. Like, he'll meet a doorman in a place that we're rehearsing, and in 10 minutes, he's like, they love him. That's my dad.
Well, Howard, as I heard you describing how you got to do this, I want to tell you that I want to pat you on the back, because so many of us believe we get to a certain age or we lose something in our life, like a spouse, and we think, okay, I'm just going to sit here and wait it out. But that's not life. And you're actually living life. And that, I think, is the most incredible part of this whole story, is that you had a life before. You're going to share those bits and pieces. We're going to see some of our life in it, and it's going to help us. And watching you on stage, whether you're reading or acting, you're giving us hope. And now I see why in a few minutes people fall in love with you and want to follow you.
And exactly, I'm just going to say one thing, and then he will add. So one of the things that's been so inspiring for me, which is something I really want to get to right away, because this was not what I expected when we were starting to do it, because, he hadn't like really left the house so much in years, because he was caretaking my mom. He works on the phone, right, with his clients. And all of a sudden we're like going upstate 2 hours to work with Elizabeth. He's getting in the car for 2 hours driving, which, it's just not what he was doing, like out of the house for 12 hours and just, but he was saying yes, which I always say about my dad. He's a yes guy. Like he was just like open to it. Maybe because my mom died, he knew he needed to get his love. And it was so inspiring to see someone who's 87 at the time, at 87, just being like open to like whatever it takes, I'm in, I'm going to do it. It was incredible. It's such an inspiration to everyone to say that, at 87, you're not too, you can always start something new. And he fell in love with it. That's the thing he didn't expect. Like after the first show, he got the acting bug, like the performing bug, big time.
Yeah, I kept saying to myself, how come I didn't notice when I was 23? I could, no, no, they're,
You can tell him what you said at
yeah,
the
I did.
talkback
I'm
because
just
this
about
was
thinking
amazing.
about that.
Yeah.
I mean, at the show last
Yeah.
time, one of the last shows we did, they after the show was completed, they brought Marla and I and Elizabeth out on stage, and the audience asked questions, and people were asking about fundamentally about the why of why I've done this and all that, and I raised the point, and which I strongly believe, that if you are physically able to and you are mentally capable, then you're never too old to be young.
Yes.
That's
I
my
love
expression I use. And in my case, I'm trying to be young,
Well,
younger.
and in the training that you had as a psychologist and a coach, that creates that positive energy because you're sharing that with your clients. I have noticed that since I've been podcasting for 10 plus years and coaching myself, that my attitude on life is so much brighter than it ever was. I mean, I could have woken up on a day like today where it's cloudy and cold outside and think, what a terrible day. I'm going to sit on the couch and just, drink coffee all day. No, that's not what I did. I got up and I started doing things around the house. I'm, doing the podcast. I have coaching clients. If you can do it, do it and tell your story because your story only helps the world get stronger. So that is
And that's
impressive.
like a big thing that, I'm a big, and I think we spoke about that when we talked about the Lael project, which of course my father is very much part of because it's his granddaughter. But about sharing of stories, but also, you just said something and I had a thought and I just lost it. What was I just going to say? It was something, about what you were just saying. And I just can't remember now.
About, I don't know.
And I'm sorry, I'll remember in a
It'll
second.
come back. It'll
come back.
So, Howard, let me ask you a question. This all came about while you're sitting Shiva. Now, many of us, who are familiar with Shiva, we think that that's just a time where we're supposed to just be remembering our loved one and, feeling in that moment. Yet, one of the things I learned when my mother passed away 8 years ago, my family said she wouldn't want us sitting here just remembering who she was. She wants us to remember who we can be because of her. And we all changed almost like that. The day after her funeral, we went to it's almost like an escape place, but we went as a group because we bonded as a family. That's typically not what Shiva's about. So, how is it for you in the middle of all this, to be able to say, "Oh, I'm going to look ahead"?
Yeah. Well, it's a great question, Karen. It's something that I think about, and I began to understand myself with respect to endings of lives in terms of its impact on me when my granddaughter, Lael, who you know about, when she passed away, it became really clear to me that grieving was present. How could it not be? And so, and this happened. Actually, I didn't think about it years ago, but when my mom died and my dad died, I went through it was similar. But this is even more was more powerful because it was a young person.
Sure.
And for me, my way of dealing with endings is to stay in my current moment, whatever that is, right? And I mean, it's here, the lumps in the throat, the feelings, the tears behind. They're always there if you think, as you bring that person into your mind. And so what I try to do is to stay focused on what's happening today. Obviously, getting involved in a show is something that's happening today,
Right.
and it allows me. So even after Roberta, Marla's mom, and my wife, when she passed away, I'm talking about a show 7 days after she had passed. Um, by the way, I just want to mention one of the stories, actually, kind of two of them, are related to Roberta. Even though she was not there in the early part of my life, which is most of what the show's about, uh, we, I wanted her there at the play, and the best way to
Love
do
that.
that is to write a story. I did write a story.
Yeah, the last one.
I
It
wrote
was
the last
written
story
now. Yeah.
about meeting Roberta, basically. So that's my answer to your question, is that I do try to stay in the moment because I know the alternative is painful and hurtful. And I can't, my words are, Marla hears me say it all the time. If I can't fix it, it adds to and I can't fix someone who's
Right. Exactly.
right.
Exactly.
Actually, I did remember what I was going to say, and it is
Okay.
connected to all this. So, about having, because you were saying about having like a positive attitude. And my father has always been someone who has an extremely positive attitude. In fact, my daughter, Lael, used to say she called it Poptivity, and like, so that's, that is something that is like also an inspiration for people to see, because they hear it, in the show. They hear that even if the stories are intense. There was one person who came twice, and she was a young girl, like 23 years old. So, and all ages like the story. It's not like people think like, oh, only older people who were Jewish, but not at all. In fact, in some ways I think, not that older Jewish people don't like it, but actually it's not. It's non-Jews, it's young people. So this young girl who's not Jewish at all, was like, just said, she just said, and because we got like people at the end, like and she's like, hearing Howard's stories, she said, it just made me feel like everything is going to be okay.
Right.
And to hear a 23-year-old say everything's going to be okay, because we know how the young people feel right now. They feel it's the end of the world is
Right.
ending. She was like, hearing him made me feel like everything's going to be all right. And that, wow. But it's that's what I said, like it's the essence and the attitude of and his positivity.
I love that. I love that. We've got to coin that word because I think it's fantastic. Positivity. I will be using that
That's
quite a
like,
bit.
wow.
Yeah. So you did 2 shows in New York, or you did a number of shows?
We've done a bunch of shows. We did 3 like off-Broadway houses. One was Tada Theater, AMT, and then Theater Row. And part of it was because those we negotiated because, we saw it was such a success. I mean, I've had people come 3 times who are not like my best friends who are going to come see it. Like people who barely know me, and they're like, I loved it so much. It really moves people. And that's what you said earlier, Karen, was there's also the unspoken part of the show, which is like we're a real father and daughter on stage, and that just moves people. Like they're just like, I just want to see this. You know what I mean? Because we're not so much like, we interact a bit in the show, but it's not like about us. It's not a story of like our journey through. I mean, but there is a song at the end where, I wrote a song for my mom when she died, but we use it in the show, Do You Remember? People usually, that's like the teary moment. And but there was some magic in that. And like Elizabeth had said in the beginning, she said it's magic because she said either people are like, wow, I wish my father was still here and I can do that, or I wish maybe they didn't have a good relationship with their father, and just seeing like a father-daughter relationship. Like there's so many ways that it affects, like a guy who, my hair guy, Keith, who's amazing, Keith Mahoney. He's from Ireland. He's 38, from Ireland, you know, he's gay, and he was just like, he loved the show, and he said he felt like I was sitting hearing a grandfather telling stories. I wish I had had my grandfather telling me stories, and he's come a few times. So this is what I'm saying. It hits that, and also hearing an elder speak and people respecting it, because there's a lot of these days like disrespect, and just like we don't have the knowledge of you know I'm an elder now too. I just turned 60.
I totally understand being an elder at this point. And I think what excites me about watching the two of you, I had a wonderful relationship with my dad. My dad loved to write. He wrote poetry. Every time somebody had a mitzvah, he was writing a song for them. And I tried writing before he passed away many, many times. And he'd look at me, he'd go, leave the writing to your brothers and myself. And he knew that the day that he passed away, I wrote his eulogy. And I said to my brothers, I'm going to read this. And my brothers sort of looked at me like, it's like your other writing, we don't know, but okay, if you want to. I caught the bug from my dad. It was all of a sudden now I could write. And so whenever I'm putting anything together, he's sitting on my shoulder. I just know that. Okay. And my parents were always the positive people. It's if you said you couldn't do something, they'd look at you and go, then do something else. You can do something. So that's what I see between the two of you.
That's,
I know what you're going to say.
if I could, I want to even broaden the concept, basically, of what you're referring to in a specific situation and what we're talking about in a specific situation. And in reflecting on all of this, I look at
It's okay. I'll get
humans. Humans live a life of change. I mean, the developmental process from the time we're an infant until we grow into a young kid, and then a young adult, and then we get married, then we have our own children, so on and so on. In the general model, right? That's
Right.
all about change, because every time something good or something bad happens in your life, there's a need to respond to that. And of course, that's not even talking about all the changes that occur just living your life, a new job, um, um, well, like I said, having children, moving out of your community to another community. Change is a constant. And the way I think about it, it's exactly what happened with the story of how I got involved in the play, is that it's all a question of how one adapts. That word adaptation is a huge word. How do we adapt to change, the good changes and the difficult changes as well? And so our story here is one of an adaptation to a change in a situation.
That's true. I mean, this wouldn't have happened, like, honestly, if my mom hadn't died, if, who knows, maybe if Elle had, like, it's just the things that, that's really good. I've never heard, he always talks about, adaptation, but I like that. It's, because it was a response, I use theater and performing definitely for healing. I mean, it's a natural thing for me. I mean, it's a creative expression. So I do music and I do this. So it's so exciting also to see my dad using it as well. I mean, he has his way, but like, and loving it and also killing it. Like, he never acted, and he's still reading, but he's really like, it's incredible. And we've had a lot, just to go back to the show. So we did a few in New York City. And then we started getting it booked, which was like, so all of a sudden this year, so that was like 2023. And then in 2024, we've been in Rhode Island, and then we were up in Westchester, a couple of shows, and we just came back from a tour of Florida. We were in DelRay and Sarasota. We're getting booked, and every show we've done has been sold out. This is incredible to me, because someone who's been performing a long time, and I do it's not that easy to get a show booked, number one. You know what I mean? But there's something about it, like you were saying, this, like the father-daughter, like they're like, oh, we don't usually do this, but this sounds really interesting. And, in the beginning, of course, sold out, some of the people we knew, but now in Florida, like, maybe had a few people, or like Westchester, we didn't know one person. So it's really been, it's such a blessing in my life, like how I feel like we're like the survivors. I mean, we're not just, in a sense though, because there's been a lot of loss. Honestly, I know I talk about this a lot, but for me, it's like, well, for my daughter, my mother, Isaac, who was my ex-husband, but I was super close with him, died of ALS. And, my father loves Isaac. My son has been struggling with mental health issues, but, and he's a survivor as well, but meaning it's just like, wow, like what a blessing. Like sometimes like during the intermission, my father will come back, we'll go backstage, like, and then he's like, I can't believe we're doing a show together. Like he's always like, I know, like it's just so like this is the thing about life. You never know. Because I've done a lot of things that I do was never like in my wildest dreams would I've imagined that I'd be doing like music and being a rock star, rocker and punk rocker in going to Europe and China and never in a million years would I have thought that my father and I at this age or any age would have been in a show together. And he's amazing. I'm not so surprised about that because he's charming and
Well, I was sort of taken with the name of your show, Karen. I'm saying, yeah, of course, the Amazing Maze, right? I mean, really, the maze of life,
avoid the maze.
basically.
Avoid the maze. No.
When I started this podcast, so I've been doing numerous podcasts, but 3 years ago, I was doing another podcast under a different name. And all of a sudden I thought, it's not what I want to do. I want to talk about real life. I want to find people who can tell me, how did you get from being that 5-year-old little boy who wanted to be a fireman? And today, you're a rock star, or you are a fireman, or whatever it is that you've been through. Because I had gotten to a point in my 50s that I wasn't where I wanted to be. I thought I knew what I wanted to do in life. I thought I was doing it. And I woke up one morning and I thought, I'm unhappy. And I had asked my question, am I unhappy in my marriage? Am I unhappy with my children? Where was it? And I realized it was internal. And I had to make some changes. And I first hit rock bottom, went through depression. But as I hit rock bottom, it was like, I don't like this down here. And there is more, and I'm going to find it. And so in doing that podcast, I thought, we really can't avoid the maze of life. We've got to go through it to get to where we are. But you know what? That's okay. Now that I look back and I think of some of those days that I was depressed and crying and thinking, oh, woe is me, I'm realizing how much good that has done me where I am today. And I know that's hard for people to hear that, when you lose a loved one, that how that can make you a better person in the future. But for some of us, it can. And losing my mom 8 years ago was my biggest transformation. I realized that the two of us really did love each other. And so I could take that with me and move forward. And that's what I see between the two of you, Poptivity and love.
Poptivity and love. And like what you're doing, Karen, with your podcast, and what I really feel strongly about, and what we're doing, and like I was saying when I was talking about with the Loella project about my daughter, is sharing stories. For me, it's all about sharing our stories and connecting with other people because, we all connect via stories, and it is really like a balm and an antidote for a lot of things that go on in life when we can connect, even if they're sad, happy, it doesn't matter how we get through. And it's just, for me, that's that connection. So like when I perform, but like now, it being somebody's stories. When I perform music, it's me telling stories, and you're providing, a space for people to share their stories, right. And you're sharing yours while you're interviewing, which I love.
Yes, absolutely.
We're connecting. It's not just us like talking, and then and I think it's just so healing.
So the name of the play is Being Somebody. You have a couple dates coming up that you're going to be performing. Is that what I understand?
No, we just finished the tour in Florida.
Okay.
We just came back like a week ago. which was very successful and exciting. We know it was the hurricane and all that stuff, but it happened because we had 2 in Sarasota and 1 in Delray. And so now we are talking next steps, like where's the next theater? We might want to do one in New York again because we haven't done one in New York in a while, and continue booking because we have a bunch of people, interested. There's some places in Jersey. There's some
Long Island.
also going back to Florida, but wherever. Like, actually, I have a friend in Vegas because people I grew up with, and he's like, Marla, you tell me you want to do it in Vegas, I will fill. I know I have the house filled, so I'm going to talk to him because it's like, why not? We're doing this, and it's like also with my dad. This is just also like he hasn't traveled in years, and all of a sudden he's like, on the plane. We went to Florida. He hasn't Airbnbs, like eating out every night. This is just my father's a really routine guy.
I love it.
He established the routine when we were away, we're very close. So like he and I are close, but him and Elizabeth, super close, and all of us, like Elizabeth and him, have become like best friends. Like he coaches her now, of course, right? But she coaches him too. So and we have like a team, and Mark Henry, who's part of our team. So we have a beautiful team that's also been part of this journey of like, sharing this show. So I'm hoping, we're doing more. We're having a meeting about it next week.
Well, I'm hoping our listeners reach out, and your information will be in the show notes so that if anybody knows of a place where we can bring this show, let's get it out there. And I'll tell you, I've got, if you do again in New York, let me know, especially upstate New York, because I've got family in upstate New York. So
where are you based, Karen?
I have family in Saratoga Springs, and there's a lot of theater up there.
Yes, so, there is. I you know what? That's a great idea, actually, because upstate has a lot of great theaters.
So I have some connections up there. Pardon?
Where are you?
Where I'm in Cleveland, Ohio.
In Cleveland, right? Of course, Cleveland Radio, right? Well,
but I've got a number of connections in Saratoga Springs, so I'm going to do some emails this afternoon and tell them about this play. Tell them to listen to the podcast because this is a show that I think we all need to see. Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Really, thank you. And hey, we're open for Ohio.
Yeah. Well, I don't have those kind of connections here, but I'm still going to put it out in email and let all my people know that this is something that I think is so important. And like you said, you don't have to be Jewish to love it, but if you are, maybe we'll just hear a little bit of twinge of an accent here and there that will make us feel at home again.
I think we sound pretty much like we're from New York. Yeah.
That sounds wonderful. Thank you so much.
Just one last comment is that if we're going to thinking about Saratoga Springs, I'll need some recommendations on some good horses to bet on
okay. Well, my brother lives a block from the racetrack, so so I know exactly where you're talking about. It's a beautiful city, and we're going to be up there for Thanksgiving, so I'll do some promoting when I'm up there. I love it.
Great, thank you. And you have all the website and all that stuff. Cool.
Right.
Great. Well, thank you so much again, Karen.
Thank you,
Karen. And we'll talk to you all soon.
Take
care now. Bye-bye.